She disappeared on an ordinary summer afternoon and, for years later, a single arrest has finally jolted a case that felt frozen in uncertainty. Authorities say a suspect was taken into custody near Rogersville, Tennessee, an event that instantly reignites hope, reopens old wounds, and forces a community to confront a truth that has tried to keep at bay. This long, painful wait may be shifting from unanswered questions toward an actual path to justice. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you'll get first-hand updates on this story and other developments the moment they happen. Summer Wells vanished from Beech Creek, Tennessee, on June 15, 2021. That afternoon began like any other in a rural corner of the state. Children playing outside, neighbors within earshot, the steady cadence of life in a small community. By evening, the routine had been shattered. A frantic call, an immediate response, and a search that would swell far beyond local deputies. Helicopters combed the skies, dive teams scanned waterways, K-9 units snuffled through brush and broken ground, and hundreds of volunteers fanned out across ridgelines, creek beds, and thickets. For weeks, the area around the Wells family home became a temporary headquarters for a massive, coordinated effort, one of the largest ground and aerial searches Tennessee had seen. The visuals from those early days were stark. Floodlights cutting across timber, volunteers forming human lines through thick undergrowth, police and federal agents coordinating logistics. The scale of the response reflected the worst fear possible in any parent's mind. A young child vanished without explanation. Through those early operations and in the months after, thousands of tips poured in from across the country. Strangers who thought they had seen a child matching Summer's description at a rest stop or gas station. Social media users posting purported sightings, and locals coming forward with recollections that might, upon first blush, have seemed insignificant. Investigators logged each tip, sometimes tracing them out and sometimes prying them open only to find they led nowhere. Over time, the volume of information became both a resource and a burden. Thousands of man-hours were consumed by the sorting, checking, and discarding of leads that proved unproductive. Patterns that might have mattered were drowned in repetition or misdirection. Yet for all that noise, not a single piece of physical evidence, no clothing, no shoe print conclusively tied to a route out of property, no personal item left behind, ever surfaced in public record to anchor the investigation. Now, years after the search has faded from nightly news, and when the running tally and public conversation amounted to theories rather than facts, law enforcement announced an arrest. According to officials, a suspect was apprehended in wooded terrain near Rogersville, an area intimately connected to the original scene. Notably, investigators have not released the suspect's identity, citing the sensitivity of an active investigation and the need to preserve prosecutorial options. Such withholding is standard. Revealing names too early can compromise witness interviews, tip sources, or ongoing forensic processes. But where public naming is delayed, rumor and speculation rush in to fill the void. The community reaction has been immediate and complicated. A mixture of relief that movement is finally occurring and a caution born of experience. Arrest does not equal conviction, and the person taken into custody is legally innocent until proven guilty. Law enforcement describes the development as the most significant break in the case since Summer's disappearance. Behind that phrase, however, lies a technical and methodical process. Arrests in cold or long-running cases are rarely sudden acts of intuition. More often, they're the product of months, sometimes years, of quiet work, reanalyzing evidence, revisiting witness statements with fresh questions, applying new forensic techniques, and following up on digital footprints long dormant. In this instance, investigators have said the arrest came after a local tip pointed them toward the woods near Rogersville. That tip reportedly provided information that, once investigated, convinced authorities there was reasonable suspicion to detain a person connected to the area. The role of a local tip underscores a recurring truth in missing person cases. Breakthroughs frequently come not from grand announcements, but from someone remembering a small detail and finally choosing to share it. With an arrest now on the table, the investigative priorities immediately shift. Detectives who had spent years collecting, filing, and sometimes setting aside items and testimonies will return to those materials with renewed focus. Statements previously considered peripheral may take on new significance when viewed in the context of the suspect's possible whereabouts and associations. Forensic teams will re-examine evidence with new questions in mind. Are there previously tested samples that, under modern DNA methods, might now yield a meaningful result? Do digital records, GPS pings, cell tower logs, and metadata from social accounts place the suspect or people connected to them near relevant locations at key times? Investigators will also reevaluate physical evidence that was collected but never conclusively linked to a person. Fibers, soil samples, or trace elements that could match the suspect's clothing, vehicle, or places of residence. Forensic re-examination is painstaking work. DNA labs are often overloaded, and retesting requires obtaining fresh warrants, having qualified technicians perform sensitive extractions, and then interpreting results in ways that meet standards for court admissibility. Digital forensics also requires legal oversight, warrants for phone data and account histories, chain of custody documentation, and careful corroboration between disparate technical sources. Prosecutors will closely scrutinize any results before deciding whether to file formal charges. They must assess whether the evidence is strong enough to meet the high burden required for indictment and, if necessary, trial. This caution reflects both ethical responsibility and a strategic legal posture. A poorly substantiated prosecution could derail the chance for a successful conviction and inflict additional harm on victims' families. Publicly, the Wells family has been pulled into a renewed spotlight. After years of living under a cloud of suspicion and relentless public scrutiny, the arrest has provoked mixed emotions. For some, it represents the first real sign of forward motion, a possible step toward answers and closure. For others, it's a fearful moment. The arrest might draw renewed attention back to the family's conduct, past statements, and inconsistencies previously flagged by the public. That tension is painful and raw. Families in missing person cases often bear an enormous emotional load, balancing cooperation with investigators against the intrusive glare of media and online commentary. In this case, the family's history of public interviews and changing timelines has already fueled debate. Now, with an arrest, those debates will resurface in force. Some will call for immediate accountability, while others will urge patience and fairness until the courts and forensic results speak. Community reaction outside the family is no less fraught. Neighbors who once volunteered in searches, civilians who track developments online, and advocates who have kept Summer's name alive all face a renewed test of patience. In towns like Rogersville, the social fabric is intimate. A criminal probe touches many lives in a small radius. An arrest compounds local anxieties. People want answers but must also guard against rushes to judgment that could stigmatize innocent neighbors. Local law enforcement and federal agents will feel community pressure to be transparent without undermining investigative integrity. Balancing public information with operational security is an old challenge. Reveal too much too soon and risk compromising the case. Reveal too little and lose the public's trust all over again. The legal path from arrest to resolution is long and deliberate. Prosecutors must assemble a case, often using a mix of forensic evidence and testimonial corroboration. Each element must be scrutinized under rules of evidence. Was the gathering of a search warrant lawful? Are witness statements reliable and corroborated? Is there any risk that evidence could be challenged as contaminated or improperly collected? Defense counsel will probe weak points in the prosecution's chain of custody, test the reliability of any forensic matches, and examine the motivations and credibility of witnesses, especially those whose tips precipitated the arrest. That adversarial dance is essential to the fairness of the system, but it can be agonizingly slow for families and communities craving swift answers. Investigators and legal authorities regularly remind the public of a simple yet critical point. An arrest is not the same as proof of guilt. It does, however, allow authorities to detain and interrogate a person under formal conditions and to seek search warrants for places and objects connected to the suspect. If those searches turn up physical evidence, items linked to Summer, DNA, or personal belongings, the investigative picture can change profoundly. Conversely, if searches and forensic testing produce nothing conclusive, the arrest may result in release or in charges that later are dismissed. This ambiguity is why officials repeatedly urge caution and request that community members defer the process rather than rush to social judgment. There are broader lessons here about how missing child investigations evolve. Summer's case exposed gaps and challenges in modern investigative work. The difficulties of processing massive quantities of public tips, the limits of technology when evidence is scarce, and the emotional toll on communities and families. Cases like this also highlight the importance of local cooperation. The fact that a resident's tip reportedly led to this arrest shows how vital even small recollections can be. At the same time, the story underscores a need for responsible public engagement. Speculation, rumor, and sensationalism can derail inquiries and harm families who may be innocent of wrongdoing. For now, the arrest is the most consequential development in years. It compels investigators to reopen files, to revisit timelines, and to harness modern forensic tools with renewed urgency. It forces the community to reckon with complicated emotions, cautious hope, dread of disappointment, and a desire for justice that cannot override the rights of the accused. The weeks ahead will reveal whether this attention is a breakthrough many have longed for or another step in an arduous legal process that still may not yield immediate closure. In closing, this arrest marks a major turning point in a case that has lived in limbo for 4 years. It offers a possibility of answers, but it also demands restraint, careful examination of evidence, respect for legal procedure, and recognition of the human lives at stake. If you have verifiable information that can help investigators, concrete details, timestamps, photographs with metadata, or first-hand accounts linked to the days surrounding June 15th, 2021, contact the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation or local authorities through official channels. They need precise, corroborated leads more than speculation. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you receive verified updates as this case unfolds. This moment is fragile and consequential. Approaching it with patience, rigor, and respect for the legal process gives the best chance that justice, whatever form it takes, will be served.